Hi, and welcome to Phantasmal Farce's Adventurise, where we delve into the world of entertainment and see if we can pull an adventure out of our arse. Our aim is to inspire and to show, so long as you look, almost anything can be a tabletop adventure. So don't be intimidated, and let's see what we can stitch together. I'm Allan, and I'm the forever GM Macastrix of a group of players in Wales. I love casting my 4th level arcane eye over stories and seeing how they translate into adventures. In this episode, we will be adventurizing Dance Macabre. The song Dance Macabre by the band Ghost is off their 4th album, Prequella, and is concerned with, as the whole album is, the Black Death, or the Plague, which is surprisingly prescient, but not why we've selected the song for the podcast. We also are focusing on the video, which follows two teenagers coming across a party at a spooky mansion, and eventually one of them becomes the Papa Nihil character of the ghost mythos, whereas the other one and all the other attendees get eaten. And so let's get into it. It's not a long video, so you can also watch it as well. Link in the show note. I'd like everyone to say hello to Rhodri.
Hello, Rhodri.
Hi. So, Rod, I don't think it's a secret. I actually big fan of Ghost. I'm not super hipster about them. I didn't know about them before their first album came out, but I found out about them not long after their first album came out, and I've been a fan ever since. And despite being one of their more poppy songs, Dance Macabre is, as the kids say, a banger. But what do you think?
Actually introduced to Ghost by yourself. You went to a concert, and I'm like, who are these people? And I looked into it, and I've started to become a small-time fan of the band myself. This may not be my favorite song that they've ever done, but I would agree with you, the youth, that it is a banger. I enjoy it. It's very pop inspired, so it's not as metal as maybe any of their other ones, but it holds the same dark flavor, even if it's what they say. Yeah, I think that the juxtaposition actually lends well to it. Talking about midnight rituals and bewitching people in moonlight, all while to a rhythmic song with evidently has a decent dance routine put to it as well. Yeah, I like it. Good video, cohesive story, definitely worthy of an episode, I would say.
Yep, and palatable enough that anyone who can listen to this can definitely listen to the song.
Yep. Description to the YouTube video in the description. In order to mechanize this, then, would you be looking at the video itself? Because I think that's, I mean, there's a lot to be cut out of the video. Or would you be looking at the theme / content of the lyrics itself?
I would take the video as the main inspiration. I'm definitely going to be drawing a lot from the video, but I do think that the song, there's kind of some sprinklings you can put from the song into it. The video has more kind of narrative to it, but it's a good video for the song. So I think because the video is so tied to the song, even taking from the video, you won't be ignoring the song. But yes, I'd definitely be focusing on the video.
Absolutely agree with you there. Yeah, I mean, reading between the lines and the actual story underlying it all, not the superficial side with the dancers and the skimpy clothes, definitely has a story to be told that is clear, and I would say has elements, if not all of it, to be mechanized.
Yeah, I think some of it requires a level of understanding of the ghost mythology to fully understand what's going on. But I think, like you say, the Dance Macabre video, it fits into that larger mythology, but it has a clear beginning, middle, and end of its own as well.
Yes, no gatekeeping here.
Yeah. So I guess we always start with, or at least my first thought is, where do the players go? And I think in this, I would make it a mystery story. So the events of the video, I wouldn't replace the two young men who approached the party at the beginning of the video. I wouldn't make the player characters replace them. I
So
would
you'd have them start in the story. It'd be in the manor itself.
No. In fact, I would take it a step back. I would make it so that the events in the video perhaps happened several months ago, or maybe even over a prolonged period. And then I would get them to investigate. Go round and they talk to the old lady who, her boyfriend went to the mansion in 1946 and never came back. Yeah, I'd have there be an investigative build up to the mansion
Would
part.
you have it done over different time frames? So you mentioned earlier that it was in 19. So would you, for argument's sake, have it in, say, the heyday of the golden age of Hollywood, and then have a gumshoe, beat cop coming to knock at the door? Would you have the players? So, for example, would you have it as episode 1 or day 1 of gaming? You would have them in this, and then they would come to some sort of conclusion. So several different one shots with the overarching theme. They would then revisit the same manner, and they would recognize it because a week later it's episode or one shot number 2, and they start to recognize things, albeit that they are in the 1970s and that the manor is run down and that they are renovating. And then you've got the 2020 version or 2021, whereby they are just themselves, maybe looking to buy, undergoing this. Maybe they're filming a documentary as the youth do these days. For whatever reason, then would you have it, basically, my point being, would you have them visit at different time frames?
That wasn't something I'd considered, so I don't have a clear vision of how I would do it, but I love that idea. Like that's something I definitely really like, and like we say, the the podcast is, you can get inspiration from anything, and I actually, that wasn't something I'd thought of, but that's a genius idea. And not to spoil the end of the podcast, but I will say that the fact I hadn't thought of that idea, but how much I like it, that has increased. I won't reveal whether I say I'd like to play this or not, but I will say that idea that I hadn't thought of going into this has definitely made me more likely to want to play it or run it. That is a solid gold idea, but it would take some work. But I definitely like that idea, especially because that ties it into. Because in theory, if you follow the ghost mythology, I believe that the Dance Macabre video should be sometime in the 60s for the timeline to work out.
Given that he is based on young Nihil, that's the actual credit given, and that Nihil later on in our universe now performing would have been in his 50s, 60s. So we'll argue that he was, sorry.
I was going to say, or possibly older. But yeah, he's not a spring chicken.
Then yeah, I would say that given he's maybe 32, he's of drinking age in America, looking to party, then yes, I would say that it is going to be. And I just thought that having a party, glitz and glam in the golden age of Hollywood just seems to add something to it. So aside from the idea that I suddenly sprung on you, what was your initial idea then? So you said that there'd be a Scooby Gang or some group would be following up. So you'd start with a prequel based off of in the 50s, 60s, and then initially your group would be coming in then some 30, 40 years later.
Yes, to investigate some disappearances, but I may now you've given me that idea, I'd have the investigation part occur in the 50s, 60s, and then it would cut to present day for the second part.
Okay.
Because I would see it as a very clear distinction. You have the investigation. It will become clear that in order to find out exactly what's going on, they need to attend one of the parties, and that's when it would switch gear from the investigation to this party's getting weird. We need to survive,
So
or escape. I guess is probably more likely.
so these two parts then. Part one is your it's a missing persons investigation. They don't know they're dead. Not that anyone does die. You'll have to watch it and find out. Um, so first of all, it's a missing persons. Then it's more of a investigation into the disappearances, sort of like a mythology type, superstitious type thing. Again, your kids with your cameras trying to do a podcast or Blair Witch type situation. The only way in is to get invited to the party, and then it becomes a fight for their lives.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd agree with that. I mean, my thoughts initially looking at the video would have been, yes, exactly that. It's your sort of your standard horror, frightened story, escape from survival. It's a dark, foreboding night, and then you maybe take sanctuary there. Maybe you're deliberately there, and then the festivities there are not quite what they seem. Everybody maybe seems to have be in good spirits, and you're maybe, because you're not an invited guest, happen to be put in the kitchen, and maybe an odd meal or two passes through. Maybe the servants are not quite what they seem. Maybe one servant comes in, she seems a little bit of a greenhorn, maybe a bit new to the group of servants. Maybe she's a new hire. um, and you see the same faces coming and going, but this one never returns. And then the inevitable things proceed from there.
So whereas I would get the players to have some level of expectation of what they were walking into, you would dive straight in with they're at the party and they don't know what's going on. As in you whereas I would give them some level of forewarning, you think it would be better to for them to, and I kind of agree in a lot of ways. It would be better to have it so that all the weirdness, there's no kind of heads up. They just see it. The first time they see the weirdness is the first time they know there is any weirdness that's going to happen.
I approached it from, because what you've done differently, see, is I approached it from not taking away the two gentlemen at the start. Our group, our players are the two gentlemen at the start. Only there's 5 or 6 of them. What you've done is you've kept your two gentlemen there first. I thought when you
Yes.
initially said that you were going to have it set, I thought that you were going to be, they'd arrived at the party an hour earlier, and then you arrive after them. I didn't realize you'd be saying decades apart, which is what sprung that thought in my head. But yeah, I in my mind had them as the uninvited guests, but obviously initially the hairs are on the back of your head because the gentleman is like, "What party?" And then he says that you've been expected. So initially, but then you're led away as if you're not invited, and then stranger things start to happen. Um,
So that's a question with the initial bit where he says what party. It's when he notices the man who will become Nihil.
it's when he looks at him that he invites them in because he's obviously seen that he is the one foretold or whatever. Um, would would you make it so that one of the player characters was secretly the one they wanted, or would it be they, for whatever reason, wanted the whole group?
Well, that's what I was thinking. I didn't really consider. I mean, it could have then gone one of two ways. It could be then that there happens to be someone else who is either voluntary or involuntarily brought in as the Nihil character, or it could be that one of the characters becomes the Nihil character, again, voluntarily or involuntarily, and then how everyone else would react to that. Would they then have to accept that this person is not coming back with them, and they continue to make their run for to safety and escape? Or is it that they are going to continue to try and defeat the evil, as it were, and try and, rescue their friend, as their friend won't rescue it? I suppose it depends on how things were going. I mean, maybe at that point in time, if I were the GM, I would have it as a plan B. I'd maybe aim to have it happen, see how the characters are reacting and behaving. If there's one of them that happens to get hooked by something that they've seen, if you try and dangle a little morsel that one of them bites onto, have them become that. In theory, if they're a good enough player, they might pick up what you're putting down, and you can lead it to that way. And then it's up to the others to make their decision based on it.
Cool. So I would. So yeah, like I said, I'd keep it very similar. So I would have the kind of the main antagonist being Sister Imperator. I would lift her directly from the video slash ghost mythos to function as the uh, the antagonist, because, like you say, whether it's a player character or an NPC, she is the one who kind of anoints the new Papa. Um, so she's the one who's trying to. She's the one with an agenda at the party. Everyone else is
There for the
part.
coronation.
Yeah, it's her who is looking out for the, like I said, whether it's a player character or an NPC, she's the one looking for this chosen one and to seduce him to the darkness.
If people listening to this are not aware of what the mythos is, how would you play this Imperator character? What sort of um, uh, personality traits or behavior would she be? For example, someone sneaky? Would she be charismatic? Would she be welcoming? Or would she have a sharp tongue?
I think because you mentioned obviously 50s gumshoe, I think there would be something of the, the femme fatale stock character, as in charismatic and intriguing, but to the players at least, if not their characters, something slightly not quite right.
Or are we thinking uh, Joan Crawford in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? Sort of like aware of their self-worth and their fame, but at the same time quite damaged and under the surface, or uh, poorly hidden under the surface, quite an angry person.
Yes, but with definitely able to play the wounded gazelle, i.e., if the players were to insult her, uh, eager to play off any perceived offense or anything as a misunderstanding, and always trying to manipulate everything to the way she wants it to go. Obviously, players that kind of pick up on that character archetype may well fight against it or they might see what's being gone for and lean into it. But that's definitely how I would. At least her initial characterization would be yes, the kind of innocent damsel in distress, or well, not in distress, but the innocent damsel who is very, not very far below the surface, isn't so innocent after all.
There is a parallel that I found that you could start on and lead the game to as well, is that the plot of the story is quite similar to the Rocky Horror Show. So it could end up being, I mean, you could start with this way, or it could end up being this way, very campy, very tongue-in-cheek. I mean, if you're going to start that way, you could even, prep little music numbers. You could even have the homoerotic overtones of the Frankenwieners and the sweet transvestite from Transylvania, maybe removing Imperator and Nihil altogether, or having them in there and again having them lean heavily into this weird thing. Maybe they could be, for anyone who hasn't seen Rocky Horror Show, I apologize, the aliens at the end who do in fact actually kill everyone and leave in a spaceship.
Because I guess you could even go for the roller coaster effect. It's all very dark and creepy to begin with, transitioning into the campy style, and then I guess you could even bring it down again. However, I do think once you kind of invite people to get caught up in the kind of campy nonsense, I think it would be very hard to bring people down from that. I think people would enjoy that, and it would be hard to bring people down from that energy without making them feel like you were spoiling their fun. I think if you go campy, you have to lean into it 100%.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you couldn't then suddenly go rocks fall, everyone dies.
Well, you could, because that in a way is a stupid cliche campy ending, but you'd have to be
Jazz hands doing it with jazz hands the whole time.
yeah. That's what I'm saying. But you'd have to be. I think you'd have to see. You always have to, as like a GM, read the kind of mood and feeling the players have. But I think it would be particularly important there that everything maintain, like once the campy tone is, like once people are really into it, you want people to have fun. And I think once you've got people camping it up, once people have kind of come out of their shells a bit maybe and got into it, pulling it away, I think people will come away from that going like, it was good, but I didn't like the end. I think that's you're at serious risk of that. Basically, if you go for the campy version, basically make it the best damn campy version you can.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would agree.
There's not a lot of action set pieces with the material that it wasn't really expected there would be. But so rather than saying what action set pieces or what kind of scenes you'd keep, what I'd want to know is, and I don't worry, I will answer myself. How would you interpret the dancers? Because obviously you have there's quite a mix of different people, but you've then got the dancers that would be more at home in an Eric Pride's video. That's probably a really old reference for anyone listening. What's a modern dance music person?
The Macarena.
Okay, yeah, they would be more at home in the Macarena. Good save. that. So yeah, how would you? And I think that because they're such a centerpiece of the video, despite having very little relation to the plot, how would you involve them? How would you? What would be your dancer's moment?
You've put me on the spot because my intention was to not include them at all. So the answer is, I'm afraid, I just simply do not know. My intention was to not include.
Okay, because I definitely like the idea of leotard. I would give them the plague doctor masks that they wear at some point, just for a little bit of traditional, uh, make them a little bit more traditionally intimidating.
Would they keep them on throughout then? So are we talking plague doctor masks, leotards, and I believe it was very Noel Fielding-esque silver booties?
Yes, they would. It would be kept the same, but I would put the plague masks on them, and I would have them as high kicking 80s workout video dance combat. If the So when I say how would I use them, if the players chose to be aggressive or violent in their solution, the enemies they would fight would be 1980s aerobics, these 1980s aerobics DVD plague doctor ninjas, monk things. I think that would amuse me anyway. Who cares if anyone else is
So
amused? I mean, I do, but
they wouldn't be there for any sort of plot point or anything. They would just be included for what really? Maybe I'm missing your point.
oh, just that I would use them. That if a fight broke out, I would use them as the primary enemy combatant.
Right. So
Just
they your rank and file foot soldiers then.
yeah, just because I like the idea of the players being beaten up by what are effectively you know what I mean when I say a 1980s aerobic video, don't you? I know they're missing the leg warmers and some of the other trappings, but they're basically that.
I'm seeing Jane Fonda aerobics. I know he's 90s, but I'm picturing Mr. Motivator and to a certain extent that Leo Sayers fella from America.
Yeah, basically just the idea of the players being beaten up by someone like that just really tickles me. So that is how I would use them. But I wouldn't make them aggressive on their own. It would be they would be tough, and so the players who might think these sparkly booty leotard wearing people would be a pushover would discover that's not the case at all. So I think we've discussed all the bits that we like about it, or at least the ones that speak to us. So let's get on and systemize.
Systemize.
Okay, so I had quite a pedestrian uh, interpretation of this. I think you definitely had the more fun out there ideas, and just like my original ideas being pedestrian, my first thought was the classic Call of Cthulhu, um, which is pretty much for horror the go-to standard. You know, it's not a interesting choice, but it is a solid choice. It is a good game. However, you could use Fear itself or Trail of Cthulhu, which if you wanted to really um, highlight the investigation, because they are the horror implementations of the Gumshoe system, which is the system by Robert Laws for investigative focus games where investigation is the main design focus. But yeah, I not being very creative, Call of Cthulhu or the horror Gumshoes.
My new ideas that have come to light within the last half hour aside, three sort of themes have come from it for me. There's the horror element, the investigative element with the horror sort of secondary to it, and then the campy version. So with the horror, you'd want something with, say, for example, 10 Candles or Dread, where unexpected things have major consequences, but also get far worse as time goes on. So inevitably, your 10th candle leads to the TPK, or the more Jenga pieces that have been pulled from the tower, the wobblier it gets and the more likely it is to tumble. You know, inevitably, as things progress, you're more tired. These leotard plague doctors have beaten you to within an inch of your life. You know, you've been mentally pounded to the ground by Imperator and her wicked ways and the evil laughs, and possibly the manor itself is an ever-ending corridor or a strange sort of non-Euclidean architecture where you're going around and around and around on MC Escher stairs. Eventually something's going to give, and then the Jenga tower falls. So I would say 10 Candles or Dread. For the campy side of things, I would say Fiasco. My experience with Fiasco has been nothing but hilarity. I don't think that's to do with the system itself, more the way we played it. But if I could play this story the way we did previously, I would find it very enjoyable. But
I agree. I think that would be a great way to do the more campy version that you suggested. Yeah.
I think for myself, the overall winner for either of them, but if I was going to take it sort of serious with an investigation side to it, I would say Kids on Bikes would be my my system of choice. Again, we've played Kids on Bikes. I really enjoyed it. It helped having moments of levity. It helps having some really dark, scary moments. Maybe the comedy side of it came from me being silly, and if I were to keep my mouth shut, it could be kept scary and horror orientated the entire way through. But it also lends nicely to sudden character death with no explanation. Sorry, you've had your last chance and you're out. You know, again, you could involuntarily spring Imperator choosing her chosen one and having him become the chosen one nihil without that character's consent. It might just happen, that being the final thing that happens, you know. But I'd say Kids on Bike would be the one.
Cool. So, without further ado, let's summarize. Okay, I know I said I wasn't going to spoil it earlier, but I think my tone of voice gave it away. Yes, I'd love to play this, especially using Dread, or making a Fiasco play kit for it would be a great Halloween party, I think.
Would you say that your love of the band is bias, or is it simply the story itself just lends itself and really, as Mr. Mr. Emeritus himself would say, tickles your taint?
No comment. I believe you're allowed to refuse to comment if it would incriminate yourself, but no comment / yes, almost certainly I am biased. Yeah.
So is that, would you like to run it or would you like to play it?
I think I'd be happy with either, really. I think there'd be a lot of fun to be had on either side of the table.
For myself, splitting it up into those two categories, into those two questions, if I was able to master creating tension and horror, then I'd say yes. I'd certainly give it a crack of the whip. Currently, no, probably not. I don't think I'm not mature enough to be able to carry the story without suddenly making some sort of nonsense reference and suddenly and sharply twisting from horror into levity. To play it, Kids on Bikes loved it. Dread loved it. because with Dread you could make the maps in advance, you're drawing them on pen, on paper, and nonsense is happening. And even then, when there is nonsense, because if I recall when we played, there was a pot smoking, was he a wood beaver? Muskrat?
Yeah, muskrat.
There was a muskrat, and even then, there was still the element that was creepy and scary, and I could still picture it in my mind's eye as a dark wooded encampment. Yeah, I'd love to play this. In fact, I would request that you make this happen as a birthday present or just a present because you love me. But I'd be very upset if we didn't play this at some point.
Well, as I said, I think it would make the perfect kind of Halloween event, and your birthday's just after Halloween, pretty much.
I can't wait that long. I can't wait that long. No, wait, tomorrow. Break lockdown rules. Wear your mask. Come tomorrow.
Okay, not tomorrow, but I'll say watch this space.
Well, I can't wait for that, and I hope what we have provided today will inspire you people who are listening, you three, to I'm over egging the pudding a little bit. You one, and that's probably me, to listen to and go out, have a look at the video, get inspired, take some notes, try and make it serious. Try and make it serious with a bit of fun. Try and make it fun, whichever you prefer. Just go out, have some fun with it. This is definitely a game I would love to play. I hope that you do too.
I think that actually worked as the end.
That was a good one. I think because I've got I feel invested in this one because I want to play it.
So that was our episode on Hope you got some good ideas out of it. So next time you need something that inspires you, you won't just theorise, but adventurize. And if you do, please let us know. All the links to socials found in the show notes. And we'll catch you next time.